Right, we're going to talk about Trump's obsession with Canada and Greenland, and whether we are going to talk about whether his rhetoric has gone too far, and also what lies behind some of his statements and his aspirations. He published a map here where Canada appears to be one of the states of the US. And other people also include Greenland here. They're saying that it's a Manifest Destiny 2.0. They say it's the Greater America Project. And there's a lot of discourse regarding this. And as you can understand, Twitter is full of discussion about this, and a lot of people like it. And let us talk a bit about Canada first and then go to Greenland. So there were several people who were focusing on Justin Trudeau's answer. Justin Trudeau said that we are not going to talk about this merger. Elon Musk went there and says, girl, you're not the governor of Canada anymore, so it doesn't matter what you say.
So he's repeating Trump calling him the governor of Canada.
Yes. Then we have some people from Canada saying that, well, it's our weakness that makes Trump and Elon Musk and other people talk to us like that. Mm-hmm. And here we have a really good answer by Pierre Poilievre, who says Canada will never be the 51st state, period. We're a great and independent country. And he says essentially that our weak and pathetic liberal government has failed to make these points obvious, and says when he is prime minister, he's going to rebuild the military and take back control of the border to secure both Canada and the US. So he is talking in a different tone than Trudeau is. But he says that, I'm not going to talk about it.
Well, Trudeau's failure is his victory, really, and whether he will actually achieve those things in any satisfactory way to the Canadian patriots, I suppose, remains to be seen. I'm personally not convinced. I think that he's a little bit too centre-right to be able to do the things to an agreeable degree.
So, basically, you think that maybe he is going to be a light Trudeau on issues like immigration, is that
perhaps? Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
We'll have to see.
I think I prefer him to Trudeau, and I hear a lot of people.
It's like, do you prefer a sandwich or a punch in the face?
Right. Let's see. But I do appreciate concerns with regard to his policies. Now we go to the issue of Trump's rhetoric, because I think that when it comes to X, it's fun sometimes. But I think that when you're a leader of a country, you have to be a bit more responsible. Mm-hmm. And then you have the response. Well, this is the negotiation of power, and this is this is the real estate manager speaking. But when you care about nations, and a lot of nationalists should care about nations, one of the main arguments is that nations aren't just businesses or economic zones. So when you're talking to nationals, and when you're talking with foreign nations, I think you need to respect them a bit more. Mm-hmm. That's my view.
Well, yeah, if you're, it's like being a guest in someone else's country in a similar sort of way, isn't it? Where you sort of follow their rules and behave yourself a bit more because you're not on your home turf anymore. And I think Billboard Chris here is right to point out that this is how Trump negotiates. He asks for something big to get something smaller because that's how you negotiate well. But I'm very hesitant to believe that whatever he's negotiating for is worth saying these sorts of things. But do carry on.
Yeah. No, I think that on a Twitter level, on X level, it's fun to it's occasionally fun. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about leadership level, I think we need to have a much more responsible leadership and demand for more responsible leadership, because reality is not X, what's going on in X. Now let's go to Greenland. We had Donald Trump Jr. visiting Greenland, landing on Greenland with a Trump airplane, and he says Greenland is beautiful. There were many videos regarding his visit, and but that wasn't the issue. Trump refused to rule out the possibility of using military or economic coercion against Greenland, the Panama Canal, and if I'm not mistaken, Canada. Now, I think that, again, this is hyperbolic. Mm-hmm. Very few people think that this is going to happen, but let's play the clip.
To Greenland and the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your...
So I think that that's just Trump, keeping all of his cards close to his chest. Yeah. You don't rule out anything, particularly if you're trying to negotiate with someone and you say, oh yeah, by the way, we're not going to use military action, we're not going to invade you, then all of a sudden the temperature comes down and it makes negotiation for, what you want a little bit more difficult. And Trump's a savvy businessman. He art of the deal and all that. And so that makes sense to him. And I think that that's what's going on there. I don't actually think he's going to use the American military to invade Greenland or Canada, because it would be political suicide for a start, as well as the fact that I think he's more interested in doing business than this sort of thing.
I will give you a response after we play this short clip as well, because I think that they're connected.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
You asked your staff to draw up plans for
So he's using tariffs here as a sort of punishment, because obviously a high tariff is going to be really damaging to Denmark's trade, and the US trades a lot with Europe. And I think saying it's for national security purposes is a little bit of a red herring from Trump. I don't actually believe what he's saying there. Yeah. Because, of course, the United States has military bases in lots of European countries. They have plenty in the UK. They've got plenty in Germany. I imagine they could come to some agreement with Denmark. It's not like these military bases have caused any problems, really, in a lot of the host nations, maybe one or two, but not to a degree to be concerned. And so if they're worried about national security, surely they could just come to some sort of security agreement, because it's not like Denmark is aligned with China or Russia. And so if there are security concerns in those respects for the United States, they're also concerns of Denmark. They're shared. And so I think what's probably going on here isn't that he needs the entirety of Greenland for national security. What he actually wants is perhaps more influence in the region, to be able to make more bases or have a better deal in that respect, because there is some use to it. However, it's not he's being a bit hyperbolic for, again, negotiation.
Yeah. No, I think you're correct, and it's important to remember he talked about Russian ships and Chinese ships. Now, we are going to talk about the new Arctic Silk Road in a bit, but I want to say that when he's simultaneously talking about the national security purposes, which is it's a lie, number one, and you can use the national security rhetoric for a lot of. I mean, a lot of
Britain needs to invade France to secure its own borders. I mean, you can make a very good argument for that, but it doesn't mean that we should conquer all of France. I know, there are a few people picking up their longbows, but now is not the time, lads.
Yeah. But also, I want to say, when you're talking about being the leader of the free world and you want to liaise with the free world, it's better if you try to liaise on terms that respect your opponents rather than terms that generate resentment. Mm-hmm. Now, I know to a lot of people this sounds wet. I don't care. This is how I think people think.
I don't think it is in many ways. If you are the United States and you alienate Europe by strong-arming territory out of them, then all of a sudden Europe starts to see America as a potential political enemy, because you only need to look at how strongly Europe has reacted. We've put a lot of money and resources, despite what Trump said, into the Ukraine effort, and I have my thoughts about that. I think we spent way too much on that, and we have no allegiance to Ukraine. It's just that our establishment really hates Russia, and there's lots of financial interest for elites there. But I think that if you start taking territory, Europe will turn against you.
Yes, and this is actually splitting the Western camp into, it's fragmenting the Western camp. You're not leading it. You're basically just saying, I want more for my own, and I'm just leaving the free world for. So it's not the idea of the leadership of the free world that a lot of people have tried to capitalize on.
I would make the argument that having control over Greenland isn't worth alienating Europe and Europe going its own way, so to speak. And I think part of the reason is that if there was a strong Europe that was economically successful, it could rival the United States in the same way that the United States is scared of China, was scared of Japan, scared of competition, basically. And, you know, if you have a monopolistic power over countries, you do have advantages. If you have the world's reserve currency, you have advantages. And they don't want to lose these advantages. And so by keeping potential competitors, that's why the United States played such a role in the destruction of the British Empire. We were a competitor. We were in the way of the United States' hegemony of the world. And so they stabbed us in the back. And it isn't the American people that did that. It was a select few people in the American government that did it. But for that reason, and I think it's this same reason again. But please go ahead.
Now, there were several European politicians who made statements, and Emmanuel Macron is one of them. I think also Olaf Scholz from Germany, as a lot of them said that we are going to defend Greenland if there is any kind of military action. Now, personally, I don't think that there is going to be. Just saying, but still, I think...
I'm not going to fight Americans for the sake of Greenland. I don't want to fight Americans for any reason, let alone a country I don't care about.
Right, so it's important to talk. There's here a profile of Greenland that we have from the BBC. You can find also other ones. So there seems to be a claim that Denmark has. It's not like Trump says that there isn't. And they say that I've seen a lot of claims about the Inuit discovering Greenland. BC in the BC
2500 BC, I think the figure that is banded around.
Yes, but also they're saying that Denmark is from in 1982. Greenland is discovered by the Norwegian Erik the Red.
That's true, yeah.
Who calls his discovery Greenland to make it more attractive. In 1986, he returns with settlers. And
I mean, the names of Greenland and Iceland need to swap around. By the way, whoever named them got them around the wrong way. Iceland's got lots of green moss everywhere. Obviously, it still gets icy and cold, but still.
Well, it says that there was a little ice age there, and temperatures fell significantly, and the Norse settlements disappeared. And then in 1721, there was an expedition led by the Danish-Norwegian missionary Hans Egede that created a new Danish colony. They established a new colony in the capital called Nuuk. In 1940, Denmark is occupied by Germany during World War II. And then in 1941 to 1945, the U.S. occupies Greenland to defend it against a possible invasion by Germany. So the defense of Greenland has been a huge issue for Denmark. We need to say this. In 1950, Denmark agrees to allow the U.S. to regain the use of the Thule Air Base, which is greatly expanded between 1951 and 1953 as part of a NATO Cold War defense strategy. So there are bases there. It's not that there aren't.
Yeah, and I don't see why Denmark and the US won't cooperate on a lot of these things. I think that both have something to gain by doing so. And I think that there must be something that Trump's not telling us to make this all come together, because he's not stupid, I don't think. I think that people might react more strongly than he might expect to this sort of thing. And he might miscalculate that, but he's obviously working towards something big here, isn't he, to do this?
Yeah. So in 1979, there was a referendum in Greenland, and they voted for a kind of administrative independence. and then they left the European Economic Community because they disagreed with the regulations over fishing and seal skin products. And then the Greenlanders in 2008 vote in a referendum for more autonomy and greater control over energy resources. And as you see, it goes like that. So there are some, Trump has offered to buy Greenland.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's not the only time in history that the U.S. has bought lands. They bought, I think, the Louisiana from Napoleon, if I'm correct. Also Manhattan, but also Alaska. So it's not the first time that talks about this occur. Right. So, and in Greenland, there have been some people who are saying maybe we should go to the U.S. Others who want to remain affiliated with Denmark.
I would say that they're quite a distinct country on their own, aren't they? So I could understand why they might want to be independent, but then to go from, Denmark to the US seems unusual to my mind. But then you never know with these things. I've never been to Greenland. I don't know what they think.
Right. So I have here a tweet by a friend of mine, Agelos Chorianopoulos, who is talking a bit about Denmark, and he's saying that essentially the rare minerals that Greenland has a very rich supply.
It always comes down to that, doesn't it? Whenever there's any international contention about land, it's always over resources. It's almost like all of politics is about resource acquisition or something.
And for some reason, they're very much involved into the tech industry. They're really needed in the tech industry. So we have here a map that was published in the Wall Street Journal that shows where allegedly there is a huge supply of iron, gold, uranium, zinc, copper, and other minerals.
I imagine the gold and uranium would be of interest, but and potentially zinc. But iron and copper, are relatively
gold
common.
is always
useful. Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to turn down more gold mines.
Small parenthesis. Just talk about Ukraine. They're saying that in the Ukraine has also a really high supply of those minerals.
That's what it's all about.
And
isn't it?
one of the reasons why we should remember that one of the reasons why the tech industry was so much involved into the narrative pro-Ukraine was also this. Let us not forget Elon Musk's Starlink's involvement into the.
They were giving information to the Ukrainians, weren't they?
Exactly. Yes. So it's not exactly that, as some of our colleagues have said, that the US was interested in gay rights for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Also, Elon Musk, runs Starlink. He's part of the administration, and he was involved in protecting those Ukrainian resources that are going to be used by companies like Tesla.
Yes. So the thing is that we need to remember the reason why Trump is interested in this is primarily economical, and it's economical for the US because the tech industry is going to be the industry of the future. It already is.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the vast majority of the resources for the minerals required for that industry are controlled by China and Russia.
We're getting a little bit better on that front, at least. We're discovering lots of new resource deposits, and it's looking less likely as well that China's going to have hegemony over places like Central Africa, because they're finding working with Africans quite difficult, which is amusing. And I think it's not as set in stone as politicians might want to make it out to be. We're not desperate for resources, as far as I'm aware. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yes, but still, there is a new trade route that is slowly but steadily opening up. That's called the $240 billion Silk Road. That a lot of people think is going to be the international trade route of the future. Experts say the route could cut up to 2 weeks off the travel time for ships journeying from China to Europe.
And that's going to be going north over Europe, I imagine, and past Russia.
Yes, so the idea is that the ice in the Arctic Ocean is melting. Here we have a really strong Russian icebreaker opening routes that can be used for extra as trade routes as well.
I mean, it goes on across northern Canada as well, doesn't it?
Exactly. So they're saying that this saves a lot of time for companies, for shipping companies. And they say, for instance, that it could save up to 50% of the time to transport goods from China to the UK.
And that's a massive amount of economic efficiency. That is, in economic terms, that is huge.
Exactly. So they say the Arctic Silk Road is a 240 billion pounds mega project led by Russia and China, and it has been hailed as the future of international trade. And the US has to somehow respond to the opening of the trade routes, and they want increased presence in the region.
It's sort of area denial, isn't it? If they're going to have this going over the north of Europe, then if the US controls Greenland, then, and you know, the UK has the other routes as well, then they're basically a little bit stuck. They have to be on our good side. It gives us bargaining power over those countries because we have the potential to damage their trade to a significant degree.
But also, if that trade route opens, and opens even more, and it's controlled by Russia and China, that will mean that to a large degree, the tech industry and the products in the tech industry that are rich in those minerals, that to whatever degree a lot of them are controlled by Russia and China, that's going to give them more negotiational power over the tech industry of the US.
That's true, yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why they're involved into this. And they say that the project also taps into the Arctic's immense natural resources, which include oil and gas reserves estimated to be worth 28 trillion pounds. Now, one thing to say is that I've heard a cynical or not so cynical geopolitical analyst who was saying that the only reason why the US establishment was interested in promoting green energy and the net zero craze was because there is a tremendous amount of resources underneath the ice. So if the ice melts, that's going to give a tremendous amount of natural resources to Russia. Or at least it's going to make them much more accessible to Russia.
I can believe it, actually, yeah, that they want to deny them potential wealth by making the Western countries less dependent on so-called fossil fuels.
Exactly, and here we have clips to show you. There's a Russian nuclear icebreaker fleet. Russia has around 55, and the US had 2.
So it's worth
about a year. These figures are from about a year ago.
It's worth mentioning as well that the Crimean War between Britain and Russia, part of the reason that went on was that we wanted to deny the Russians a winter port, because in the winter obviously Russia is cold and a lot of the water freezes, and so it's difficult to get ships out. And of course, in the past that was more important. Now they've got these ice-breaking ships, and so they can manage it. But it's still more useful to have a ship that, a port where it doesn't freeze over, militarily largely. And so I think that's certainly a part of it, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'll end the segment with a tweet that infuriated me, a post that infuriated me by Guy Verhofstadt. He says Trump wants to... He responded to Elon Musk's decision to host Alice Weidel from AFD on an X space. And he says...
Is she the lesbian leader?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he says Trump wants to buy Greenland, Musk wants to decide who governs Germany and UK, Putin invades European countries, foreign billionaires looking at a map with dreams of carving up the world, Europeans recognize imperialism and reject it, who will defend post-1945. This infuriates me. It absolutely infuriates me. Because the main reason why Europe is weak is European bad leadership.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why, for instance, the EU is behind in the tech industry is ridiculous socialist policies of the EU.
I very much agree. Yeah, there's no reason that we can't be successful. It's all because of mismanagement, isn't it?
Yes, and also who is going to defend? All of that is self-imposed. The open border craze, the benefit spending craze that is primarily to foreign nationals who frequently don't show any will to integrate. And they have an establishment that tells them don't integrate. Anyway, I shouldn't get very much started with that, but let's just say also, who will defend post-1945 Europe? Well, if it's a European, if it's a continent that is structured upon a union that completely demonizes any kind of national sovereignty, well, yeah, people won't want to fight for it. So don't protest a lot against people from non-Europeans acting aggressively and having aggressive rhetoric. Focus on setting your house in order first. Right. So Trump isn't crazy to want Greenland. And Canada. We told you why we think he wants them.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.